Hi, and welcome to Mark's Motivational Podcast for this Tuesday episode. So I'm delighted to be joined by another guest today, Remie Michelle Clark. So you're very welcome along today, Remie.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. And you seem to have a lot of strings to your bow there. Do you want to start off by can you tell the listeners about what you do, please?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm a writer. I write novels, and I've also edited a collection of short stories called The Broken Spiral for the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre, which came out in 2018. And I have another novelette on the way with Open Pen. And I'm also, in my day-to-day life, I'm a voiceover artist.
Wow, yeah, great. Because I can see that. I'm very interested in that part of it as well. Voiceover, do you do for film and for stories and books and stuff like that? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive industry. From animation to dubbing films, to advertising that's on the radio, that's on TV and radio, to e-learning courses, which is a big thing at the moment. All sorts of things, corporate jobs. It's massive, really. Anything that you could possibly think of that could be voiced is voiced. I'm also the voice of an AI bot for Microsoft.
Oh wow, yeah, God, that's great. Yeah,
the voice of Bing, basically.
Brilliant, yeah. And can you talk about being an international voice over artist? How has that been? How long have you been doing that yourself, Remie? How long has that been
going on? Yeah, well, I started as an actress, so I went to drama school. I was always interested in acting and drama when I was in primary and secondary school, and I did a little bit of film work when I was still in secondary school. And then when I left, I knew what I wanted to do straight away, and that was go to drama school. So I did. I went to drama school for a few years, and then I moved to London, and I was working over there. And then after about 5 years, I kind of realized I didn't really like the in front of camera life as much, but I still like the storytelling aspect, the voice aspect and the creative aspect of it. So I sort of moved organically into just voice work. And then I moved back to Ireland, and I continued from there. And then over time, I ended up getting my own studio. And so as the industry has shifted, especially in the last year or two, I've shifted with it, and I do a lot of stuff from home now.
Yeah, like a lot of us.
Yeah, exactly. Before, it would have been going into the studios in Dublin, or maybe traveling to London to work, or doing an ISDN, which is a link up internationally between studios. But now almost all of them happen in my studio, and only, it's like a treat when I get to go out to a different studio. It's a nice change.
Brilliant. And that sounds great. Thanks a lot for sharing that with us. And we might just talk about your writing now as well. Have you always written yourself, Remie?
Yes, I have. Again, it's something that I've always been interested in since I was young, and that I've always done for myself. And then actually kind of going hand in hand with moving to London to work as an actress, I started to write my first novel when I was over there, which was an idea I'd had for a while. And it's called The Glass Door, and it's published now by Dalzell Press and is out there in the world. And it was something I started there. So I moved to London in 2008, and I finished writing it in about 2011. I didn't have a laptop when I started. I was writing on scraps of paper, and then I eventually transferred it over and started putting it out there, and it got me interest. Agents were interested in it, and then I won the Green Bean Novel Fair Award with it in 2016, and that got me a second agent, and it went on a long journey, but eventually got published there in 2018.
That's brilliant, because I can see that in Dalkey, you won it in the Dalkey Festival. Is that right, Remie?
Yes. So I won an award for the book in Dalkey Festival as well, the Discovery Award. I think that was in 2013, and then it was in I got an agent, but it didn't find a publisher. And then I won the other award, the novel fair, and had interest from agents there, and then picked an agent from that. So, who is Paul Feldstein, who's a wonderful agent living up the north with his wife Susan. They run their agency, the Feldstein Agency, up there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I'm delighted things are going. How can people get your books? I can see you do a lot of short stories as well.
Yeah, so my short stories are mainly published in journals and online. I don't have a collection of short stories that I
Okay.
have published myself. Um, I have The Broken Spiral, which is out there. It's in bookshops around the country. And I think you can get it online from Kenny's in Galway, and it's still in a few shops around Dublin, but that was a limited release because it was the purpose of that was to raise money for the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre back in, I think that was 2017 when I brought that out. 2018 was when The Glass Door was published, and that's available on Amazon and Book Depository and all those places.
Great. Because what I'll do is I'll put your website on the show notes as well, because I think your website's really, really good. It's really like easy to maneuver, like, and go around. Like, so well done on that.
Oh, thanks. I built that myself.
Yeah, it's really, really good because the Glass Door, that sounds really, really good as well. Did it take you long to write that, the novel?
Yeah, as I said, I started it in 2018, but it was the first time I'd ever kind of seriously sat down and said I was going to write something or going to attempt to write something.
Yeah.
And I was living in a dingy flat in London that had this habit of flooding in the basement.
Oh, God.
And I was writing it on scraps of paper and then eventually transferred it over. So it was nearly 3 years, I think, writing it. And then it went through many edits over the years since then, when I worked with different agents or editors throughout the process. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah, that's great. And it must be a brilliant feeling to get it finished, like, because such a work for 3 years. Like, well done.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. And also, no, brilliant. You also produce a podcast. Would you like to give that a mention?
Yes,
What is the name
absolutely.
of it?
I can't claim the production of the
Okay.
podcast, unfortunately. I just host it occasionally, along with a host of other people for Film Network Ireland. It's
Very
called
good.
Rap Chat. It's called Rap Chat, and it's all about different people in the industry, the film industry, and not just actors and directors, but anyone behind the scenes, producers, people involved in sound, photography, or cinematography, anything like that. People who are on, the vast array of positions within the film and television industry, and not just Ireland. We interview and talk to people outside of the country as well, but anything that would spark interest within the industry is what we like to just chat about. People's journeys, how they got to where they are, what inspired them to get to come in, get into the film industry in the first place, which is, for many people, probably a daunting prospect.
Yeah.
Any sort of creative industry can be. So yeah, that's what we do. And I occasionally interview different guests, or do specials. I recently did a special on the Irish film Wildfire that came out it just went on general release this month, but I went to a preview screening of it in London back around June 21st or so. So that was really wonderful to be able to do that and kind of do a live podcast in that way. That also had the interview element. So yeah, it's really enjoyable working with them. They're a great team, and they've lots of different people interviewing for them, people who are directors, people who are writers and voice actors, or writers and actors like me. So there's lots of different perspectives that come to it.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. So if you want to maybe share the name of the podcast as well, I can put your website. I think all that information will be on your website as well, Remie, is it?
Absolutely, yeah. But the podcast name is Rap Chat, and it's a Film Network Ireland.
Oh yeah.
I can give you all those details.
Yeah, I must check that out. God, I'd like to hear that. It sounds very good. And yeah, brilliant. Thanks for sharing that with me as well. So like so what motivates you in your work to keep going if you ever find yourself like blocked, like, or hit a metaphorical wall, let's say, that happens to a lot of writers, and like
Yeah,
I can know that myself, that feeling as well. So
absolutely.
yeah, what kind of keeps you motivated yourself, Remy?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had those moments, and some of them have lasted a very long time.
Yeah.
I think that it was definitely a learning curve for me. I think with my first novel, there was a lot of peaks and troughs emotionally in the process because I felt like initially it was full of excitement for me because I won an award and got an agent. And then it was, this sense of, oh, the next logical step is that I get published by some amazing publisher. And then this happens and that happens. And, where all the places your mind goes. And that didn't happen, it kind of ground to a halt for me. And then it started up again. And then it did get published, but not in the way that I had initially imagined for myself. So I had to kind of go through a lot with that journey where I had to just sort of stop taking it so seriously and putting so much pressure on myself and the book, and so much pressure on myself to achieve a certain outcome with that book or with any of my writing now. I used to have a lot of stuff wound up in my writing, reaching a certain level of success. And now it's not that I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
It's just that, I write and I enjoy writing, but if nothing happens with it, I'm kind of okay with that now. I've kind of come to a place where it's not as serious. I don't take myself or my work as seriously anymore. There are so many factors as to why a certain book will take off and another one won't. And sometimes it's impossible to understand the reasons for that. And so I think how I keep going is by relaxing, just not worrying about it so much anymore, not putting so much pressure on myself or the work, and just in and focusing in on a story or, a character or something that interests me and just letting that be the guide.
Yeah, that's great advice for anybody listening, because like sometimes when you kind of start letting you get in the flow, then when you're not so worried about worried about what can happen and what can't happen, you're in a kind of a flow. Would that make sense? Is that kind
Yeah.
of, yeah, because like I think the best work can come that way, because you're not kind of procrastinating or anything like that. You're just going for it, like, aren't you?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I do
Yeah,
think so. I
yeah,
think getting into the flow can be hard sometimes because there's so many pulls on our attention.
yeah,
Procrastination is easily done these days. All you have to do is pick up your phone.
yeah.
Um, so it's it's hard. It can be a real challenge to set aside time to allow yourself to kind of get all that jittery energy out of your body and out of your mind before you can settle into something. But I also think the way we live now, there's also something to be said for being able to dip in and out at times that it suits us, because not all of us have the luxury of 10 uninterrupted hours that we can devote to sitting and writing and, whatever else is involved in that. And probably half of that is hours of procrastination and looking up different, pairs of shoes on Google or something. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think, getting good at sort of trying to just dip in and focus when you can is another skill that's worth honing. Especially, most people don't live off their writing. If they can, that's amazing. And I'm sure that's the
Mm,
goal for a lot of writers.
yeah.
Um, but after a certain point, I think, if that's not your only thing, a lot of people might have a 9 to 5 job, or they have other work that they have to do, or they've got other deadlines. Even if they do live and support themselves exclusively as writers, they also have to write articles. They also have to write other pieces. They have to do reviews. Maybe they do ghostwriting. So there's lots of different ways that writers, can make ends meet. So they have to be able to dip in and out of their creative work too, and be able to just focus when it's necessary. I think.
Yeah, that's a great point, Remy. Thanks very much. Yeah, great point. Yeah, so yeah, maybe moving on. Your favorite. Do you have any favorite books yourself that have inspired you in your work?
Yes, I have many. Impossible to name all of them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But I would say that Jean Rhys is probably my favorite author. Um, she wrote The Wide Sargasso Sea, which is a kind of a retelling of Jane Eyre from the perspective of Bertha, mad woman in the attic.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's just an incredible writer. She has this sort of, she almost seems to write directly from the subconscious. There's something very liquid about the way she writes. Anyway, she's just gorgeous. And I also love, I tend to love anything that Persephone Books publishes as well. They focus in on kind of modernist female writers from sort of early 20th century wartime era novelists, like Catherine Mansfield. Catherine Mansfield would be a great example. So they're the type of authors that I absolutely love. Also love John Steinbeck. He's amazing, and John McGahern of the Irish tradition. So I have many, many authors that I absolutely adore and many books that are amazing to me. But I think books that really, that somehow really occupy the present moment in its entirety are the ones that really grab me. And I think that's why authors like Jean Rhys and Catherine Mansfield really speak to me, because they're very focused on the immediacy of what's happening now and their surroundings. And the same, one of my favorite books by John McGahern is That They May Face the Rising Sun. And it's such a simplistic book in many ways, because it's just about the day-to-day of life, living life in a rural setting, and, you know, the changing of the year and the seasons, and, you know, working the land and stuff like that. And that too is this sense of complete involvement in the now. And I think that that's almost something that a lot of writers are maybe trying to capture in the process of writing itself. So maybe that form of storytelling is quite pure in a way, the pure
Yeah,
essence of writing.
that
And
sounds
maybe
really, really
that's
good.
why maybe that's why I like it so much, or like
Yeah.
these writers in this type of story so much.
Yeah, because like now, like it's great this part of the podcast. You get some great recommendations for books, so that's great. Thanks a lot for sharing that with me, Remy.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, and your favorite movies as well. Do you have a favorite movie? I know you probably like a lot being involved in your work, like, but can you? Well, what would your favorite be yourself?
Oh, my favorite film. Oh God. My favorite film. Well, I think I really love the work of Jane Campion. And one of my favorite films by her, or my favorite film by her, really is Bright Star, which is about the poet John Keats and his love affair with Fanny Brawne. And it's a really, really beautifully told story. Again, a simple story just about love, about work, poetry, and two personalities coming together and falling for each other. And it's got a tragic element as well, but there's a sort of it's incredibly beautiful to look at. And there's almost a dreamlike quality about it too, which I love anything that sort of touches on the dream world or sort of brings in a dreamlike element into what would otherwise be a realistic medium. So I love Jane Campion and I love Bright Star. And I also actually love Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is another favorite of mine. Again, it's a love story. I think I really am a romantic when it comes to films. I love a period drama, and I love a solid love story. And again, that one has a sort of a magical element to it as well, because of the fighting and the prowess of the warriors, and the sense of time, you know, the spiritual element to it as well, which I really enjoy. It's a very exciting film too. Amélie is another one. Again, a love story. It's a French film. So that's That's a great one. That's quite quirky and humorous and irreverent, and I like that one.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to like more heavy films, but I've kind of just, I remember when I was a kid, my favorite film was Sleepers. And as I've gotten old, which is a really kind of dark and heavy film to like when you're about, 14 years old. But when as I've gotten older, I think I just gravitate towards things that are gentler, softer, a bit more romantic in tone.
Yeah, more relaxed. Yeah. And so over the last 2 years we've got plenty of time to be looking at Netflix and all that kind of stuff. We're all kind of Netflixed out at this stage, aren't we?
Well, I actually didn't really, I don't think that I got into Netflix as much as I could have. I actually found I was actually really unable to read for a long time when the pandemic hit. Stopped being able to read, wasn't really writing that much either, and didn't even really want to watch TV. And I kind of was just doing a lot of meditation and relaxing and, I don't know, being in nature or something. There was a part of me that just couldn't take anything in. And I think that a lot of people went through that. I mean, I'm a part of a few different writers and readers groups online. One of them being Ricochet's book club, which I know half of Ireland is in. But a lot of people seem to say that they had gone off reading, or they could only read certain types of books. They usually liked a certain style, and now they couldn't read anything like that. They had to read something completely different. And I just found that I couldn't read anything. I could only read stuff I'd already read before, or short stories. That was all I could really get my head around. So I managed to get through the Persephone book of short stories, and I managed to read Philip Pullman's Book of Dust, and that was it. I think in a year, I think I managed to read about 3 books, and normally I'd get through 3 books in, a couple of weeks. So
yeah,
it was a big change.
Everybody had the kind of way of dealing with it, really, didn't they? The pandemic, the last 2 years, been unbelievable. But I
think especially when it first hit. Yeah.
I like that you mentioned that you've done a lot of meditation, because I think that's really, really helps a lot of people. Like, living in the moment, like, is really, really good point for anybody that's listening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
and
really
again,
good.
It doesn't help everybody.
No.
But I think there are different forms of meditation. You can sit on your meditation cushion and listen to music, or, chant and things like that. Or you can just garden for a while, or you can go for a walk, or you can cook. I think there are a lot of different ways that you can get into a sort of a meditative state. Maybe you knit, or maybe you make blankets, or make jam. I don't think that you have to do the traditional wear a pair of paisley pants and sit on your floor surrounded by candles and incense. I don't think that has to be the way. I think, again, it's just finding whatever helps you to sort of shut your mind off and get into that flow state where you're totally focused on the moment at hand and the task that you're involved in.
Yeah, mindfulness is a big thing. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And your favorite music as well. Do you have a favorite genre of music?
Yeah, music is massive. I mean, I think most writers need to have a certain playlist with them when they're working, depending on what they're creating. The music would probably change, but I really love I love artists like Rye, London Grammar, and I love Joy Crooks as well, and I like a lot of kind of new soul, the kind of new wave of soul, young new artists who are kind of bringing in a new slant on soul. And I love anything a bit bassy and dreamy. I don't know what the actual term for the type of music I like is, but that kind of thing.
Sounds nice, but sounds very nice.
It's all good.
Because that's great the way you're saying that as well, because lately when I've started listening to music, like on a playlist on Spotify for writers, I find that really, really good, just to be able to, like, there's no lyrics, it's all just music. It's great to kind of
I do love classical when I'm writing, because like you say, I think when you're listening to lyrics when writing, it can be really jarring, if
Yeah.
you're trying to, all these words are coming in your ears and you're trying to create your own
Yeah.
words. It can be a little bit off-putting, but there's actually a girl who has a YouTube channel called Ultraviolet, I think,
Mm.
or something like Ultraviolet. And she makes these brilliantly named playlists like You're a Villain in the 15th Century in Italy.
Okay.
And it completely immerses you into a certain state, or you've just fallen in love in 18th century France. And all the music is completely geared around this sort of this world or this moment in time or this feeling. And it's all perfect. It's absolutely gorgeous. So I like to listen to her stuff when I'm writing. She just comes up with great things. I think you're on mute there, Mark.
My apologies. Sorry. I just I had to close the window there because there's a bit of too much noise coming in. I didn't want to distract you. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's no problem.
Yeah. So yeah, that's great. That's really good. Thanks a lot for sharing all this with you. So is there anything else I haven't asked you that you'd like to mention on the podcast, Remie?
Well, I have a book coming out in next year. So it's a novelette, which is basically just a short novel called Underground. And that is developed from, it was a short story that I wrote. And then it was picked up by a London publishing company, Open Pen, who they published one of my short plays before. And were interested in my writing, and we kind of kept in touch over the years. And anyway, so they wanted to now publish Underground as a novelette. So that's going to be coming out early next year.
Great. Yeah.
In the UK and Ireland so far. So I'm really looking forward to that. They're a really interesting publisher with great looking books, which I think is important. But also they look for unusual stories, and the story itself is unusual. It's about a young woman. She's an expat from Ireland. She's recently moved to London, and she's taken a job in a nightclub. So her life is completely turned around, where she would have been, living by day. Now she lives by night and sleeps by day. And it brings out all these strange obsessions in her about what's beneath the London pavements, and an obsession with death and suicide and things like that. So it's dark in some ways. In some ways there's a little bit of dark humor in there as well, but it's I think it seems poignant now, especially in the last year, since what happened to that young woman who was walking home one night and disappeared off the London streets.
Oh God, yeah.
So I think so that's coming out early next year, Underground, with Open Pen London, and I'm really excited about that.
Well, the best of luck with it. I hope it does really well. So when it does come out, you might just share it with me as well, so I can put it on this podcast for people to find it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that'd be great. That'd be great, yeah. And finally, thanks a million for coming on, Remie. I really enjoyed this podcast. Thanks very much for coming on and being a guest. So finally, what advice would you give to people listening to keep themselves motivated, whether it be in their writing or what? Would you give any, like, just a short bit of advice yourself from your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, advice is all relative, and I think that the most important, or the advice that I would have given myself maybe 10 years ago when I was starting out, was, not to take myself or my writing too seriously, and not to pressure myself, or feel a sense of urgency about having things go a certain way, or not to have too many really strong expectations, really, and to just relax a bit more, and to enjoy it, because anything can happen in an instant. Things can change. You may be motoring along and getting nowhere, and all of a sudden something will come through for you, and you just don't know when that moment will be. But also there are other things that are just as important. And I think when you're struggling with a piece of work, or finding it hard to find motivation, it's usually a time when you need to take a break rather than push through. And I think the time of us pushing ourselves to the limit and overworking, I think we've all seen in the last year and a half how that doesn't really help anybody.
No.
So I think learning to rest instead of quit, I think that's a famous quote by somebody, is an important way to kind of keep your motivation going. Because if you're focusing in one direction, it's not getting you anywhere and you're just feeling worse and worse. There's something else you can do. You can look at the sunset, you can plant a garden, you can make a nice meal, you can connect with your family and friends, and find what's important apart from the work or apart from what you're trying to achieve and create, and know that you're more than just your creations and your achievements, and that you're valuable inherently beyond all those things.
Yeah, that's brilliant advice. Thanks very much, Remie. That's really, really good. Thanks a million for
Thank you, Mark.
sharing that, everybody. So it's been great talking to you, Remie, and I wish you all the best in your future endeavors as well. So I have a famous voice here today as well, everybody. Google Bling, is that right?
Yeah, so no, Microsoft Bing. So if you're searching on Microsoft Bing, I'm the one telling you the weather and all of that.
It's an honor to have you on. So thanks very much for coming on. It's been great. So listen, all the best again, and thanks a million, Remie. And thanks everyone for listening to today's podcast with Remie Michelle Clark. I really hope you enjoyed the podcast. So I'm going to put all your links in the show notes as well. So check them out, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks a million, Remie.
Thank you.
Thank you.